honestly, I think sometimes I listen back to my stories and I think people are going to think that I made this stuff up, because honestly, when I think about it, I think, really? Did that happen? And it did happen. And people are like, how the hell did you cope with that? And I'm like, I'm unsure, but I did, because I'm still here. I'm still here to tell the tale. But I didn't have anybody to talk to about that. I came back from Ibiza and I was like, oh, and it was a front. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. You will never believe what has just happened to me today. So I am recording on a Friday. It was 11:11 when I started the recording. Everything was fine, dandy, great. I always forget that my computer is fighting for its life, and I got to recording about 40 minutes worth of this episode, and my computer crashed and I lost the entire thing. So I've tried to recover it. I've tried to reboot my computer, but at the end of the day, I didn't save my work. So serves me right, really. So we're back again, second time lucky. It was the most annoying thing is I obviously speak from my heart and how I'm feeling, and it was so good. I really loved that episode, and I looked down, it was 37 minutes. I think I was 40 minutes in, and I was thinking, this is such a good episode. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really loving talking about this, and I'm making some really good points, and I hope that they'll be able to take this away. And it's all just gone. So it's a good job that I map out my episodes, because I was actually, just as my computer crashed, saying that I hope that people understand that I do this in a methodical way and I work through the episodes in a methodical way. But it's now 13 minutes past 12 on a Friday, and I'm going away tonight. So basically I'm sat here, I'm re-recording this episode, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to cram everything that I got into the last episode into this episode. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the catch up. So I've had a really busy week, and it's only getting busier. Like I just said, I'm going away this evening. Very, very excited to get away for a bit. And then I'm coming home, and unfortunately I have an operation next week. And so, I mean, for somebody who's got to 32 years of their lives and never had operations, I've had 2 in the space of 9 months. I don't actually know if I'm going to show up on video next week. It's going to be dependent on how I feel, how I look, what damage I come away with, and not to be one of those people that's like, oh, I can't tell you. It's nothing like that. It's just that, like I always say, sometimes I do like to keep my life private. And I think when you expose yourself online, a lot of people expect a lot from you. And as much as I love creating connections, certain things I just want to keep offline. So having an operation, and that's on Wednesday. I'm not going under general. I'm just having local anaesthetic on 2 areas. Fingers crossed this will be the end of my visits to hospital, because I was saying to one of my friends, I was like, for somebody that didn't grow up in hospitals, and what I mean by that was, you know, like these kids, and I went to school with people that were like, oh, we had to go to A&E last night, or we ended up in A&E last night, and we just didn't as children. I think my eldest sister was quite poorly as a child, but we just didn't go to A&E, and I don't have any bad memories of being in hospital, but I hate them. I absolutely hate them. And I went for my pre-op on Tuesday, and I don't know whether it's just because there's lots of sadness, you know, people are ill. You don't like going to hospitals. It's not an enjoyable experience. And I was in like the pre-op clinic, and there was no windows. And I mean, the staff are amazing and everyone's perfectly nice, but I just don't like them. So I'm not looking forward to it. I've written off Wednesday and Thursday next week just to kind of give myself a little bit of like time to recover. I don't think I'm going to be in loads of pain, but I think the pain is going to be there. And And even when I came out of my pre-op, I felt exhausted just from being in that environment. And it's not an environment that anybody likes, I don't think. But yeah, so I've got an operation next week. So I am looking forward to going away this weekend and switching off. And then I'm coming back. My operation's in the morning. So I'm going to use Wednesday and Thursday to cram loads of content in whilst I'm going to be horizontal, I think. And the main thing that I'm worried about is the fact that I'm not going to be able to exercise. Shock. We had this when I last went in for my operation. I'm not going to be able to do any exercise. I don't know how long for. That plays on my mind. And so yeah, fingers crossed I'm not going to be out for ages. But I'm just going to have to be maybe adding a couple more thousand steps onto my walks. I'm going to be able to walk. I just don't think I'm going to be able to do Pilates or run, which is annoying. However, I have been on a 9-month waiting list, and I think I spoke to you guys about my last operation where I couldn't wait. I was in a horrendous amount of pain. So I paid to go private. I've not had to do that this time. I've actually been called up. I mean, it's taken 9 months, but I know this is just something that isn't causing me any harm at the moment. Whether when they slice me open and find something, I don't know. It's one of those things that they don't know what they're going to find until they go in. So that's me at the moment. I have found that my Patreon has been getting a lot more subscribers. I don't know whether that's because people are making their way through my podcast episodes where they come to the part where I launched my Patreon, or whether they've seen me talk about my Patreon on my stories. My Instagram is obviously growing at the moment, which is very exciting. And I love having everybody new on my Instagram, my Patreon, my TikTok, and my podcast as well. So if you're a new listener and this is the first episode that you've listened to, welcome. There's over 119 episodes on this podcast. There is 166 episodes on my Patreon. You can find my Patreon by following the link in my Instagram bio, on any bio, and I think it's on my Spotify, Apple, and my YouTube bios as well of the videos. You can follow the link, sign up. I have had to readjust the payment tiers because the exchange rate changed and I didn't realise. I think people were signing up for I was like, oh yeah, it's £4.50 a month. People were signing up and it was like £2.88. So I just had to make an adjustment this week on the pricing. So it works out to be £5 a month now, I think, with the exchange rate. So it's £5 a month. You get 2 additional episodes a week. I talk about very personal things over there. I talk more on cheating. I talk more on money. I talk more on things that I wouldn't want to put on a public platform without the protection of a subscription. So I mentioned a few months ago the review that I had on my Apple platform, and I'm totally convinced. In fact, I know that it was somebody that I knew because they were mentioning things that I hadn't even mentioned on my podcast. So I know it was somebody that I knew. And so I'm now very careful about what I talk about on my public podcast episodes. So, you know, I get protected by a subscription fee and I can see who signed up as well. So it gives me that little bit more of protection. I also am more reactive on my DMs over there. So I think I'm averaging about 100 to 200 DMs a week now. And I always get like the starting message from people that's like, hi Lou, I know you must get loads of DMs. And I feel like saying like, yes, I do get loads of DMs, but I always reply to people. I reply once a week on maybe a Sunday or a Monday evening. I'll sit down, I'll get my laptop out and I'll reply to everybody's DMs. On my Patreon, it's slightly different. I work on a 2-day turnaround. I'll always get back to you after 2 days. So if you want to sit and talk to me and want like, you know, advice quickly, then I'd advise that you go over to my Patreon. I always say to people, you can come and stay for as long as you want. You can sign up for a month and then go for a month. I've got girls that have signed up over there that have been members over there since the minute that I started talking about my Patreon on my podcast. So you can go over there and sign up. See if you like the content, see if you want to stay for a bit. Like I said, there's over 160, I think there's 166 episodes. They range from 10 minutes to 40 minutes. If I go over 20 minutes, I always just make sure that I just do 1 episode a week. The reason why I started my Patreon was to be able to connect with you guys more, but I wanted to create shorter, digestible content because I know when your mind is on overdrive, the last thing you want to do is maybe sit down and listen to an hour's worth of me talking. So I make them 10 minutes that you can just pop on in your car when you're commuting or when you're on your way to something. 20-minute ones, again, it's just 20 minutes of your time. And then obviously the longer ones are when someone's usually requested me to talk about something. I like to give a lot more value on requested topics. So if that is something that you want to be a part of, like I said, just follow the link in all of my bios. You can find the Patreon link there, sign yourself up, and I look forward to speaking to you over there. If not, this week I'm going to be talking about bravery. Now, this was a topic of conversation that came up because I was listening to an episode of a podcast that I think it was with Grace Beverly, who is the creator of Tala. It's like an activewear brand, and she has also created a journal as well. I can't think what it's called, but I see her advertising it. And she has quite a lot of influential people on her podcast. And she was talking to a woman who was a business owner. And she was talking about how she was brave in being a business owner. And it was a really, really good episode. I listened to a lot of stuff about running businesses, CEOs, and their mindsets and their thought processes. I'm very interested in how their minds work, and I love reading books of like CEOs that have created £1 million businesses, and I'm very much into that. And when I'm not reading self-help books, I'm reading something or listening to a podcast to do with business. And that's how I came across it, and I thought, she's so right in that she was saying people always talk to her and say, you should be proud. And obviously I sit here and talk about being proud of yourself for getting through your breakup and working through your breakup and celebrating the little wins. But I don't ever sit here and talk about bravery. It really got my mind ticking over, and I was thinking about certain situations where I'd been brave in my breakup and how I'd worked through being brave and just certain things. And I thought this is going to be a really nice episode for somebody to listen to when you are feeling like you do not feel strong or you're not being brave, and even differentiating being brave and being resilient and all of those things I wanted to cover in this episode, because you will probably find that when you do something, people go, you should be so proud, you're so strong, because people don't say you're brave. But it has such a huge meaning. And the more I dug into it and the more I was like brainstorming like loads of things, the more I thought, yeah, this bravery is so much more impactful than people realize. So I'm going to get into talking about that. Obviously, I've already spoken about it for 40 minutes. Honestly, technology, sometimes it really works for me, sometimes it really doesn't. And today I can see on my screen the recording that says Lula video recording that hasn't loaded. It's just combusted and just broken. And I can see it. It says 41 minutes. And so I'm going to talk to you guys about bravery again. And hopefully I'll be able to cram as much useful information into this episode than I did to the broken episode. So without further ado, guys, for the second time, let's get into it. So the first place I want to start is adult bravery versus childhood bravery. And I think this is why this is going to be such a nice episode, because I think when you talk about bravery, it does sound a little bit patronizing, because you relate being brave and you're so brave back to being a child. And I think when I was planning this whole podcast episode, I realized that it does and will speak to your inner child. And that's probably why I enjoyed doing it so much, because it was almost like I was soothing my inner child. So when you're a child, when you hear the word being brave, it's usually after you falling over, scraping your knee, having to put a plaster on it, getting back up, going to your parents saying, oh, that really hurts, you're so brave. And maybe I remember, and I used to, and still am, I'm quite afraid of the dark. I don't really like dark. I think it's like this being scared of like the unknown. And I remember the time when I didn't have to sleep with the landing light on. And at one point in my life, there were 6 of us living in our house. And so like my brother, obviously being 12 years older than me, I was say like 5, he was like coming up to being 18. He was having to sleep with the landing light on because I was 5 years old and petrified of the dark. But you know, like having to sleep without the light on, and in the morning your parents being like, oh my God, you're so brave. And a majority of the time with childhood bravery, you are met with reassurance. You are met with applause. You are met with the reassurance of, oh my God, that act and you doing that and you coming back from that fall, you know, sleeping with the light on, you are so brave. But adult bravery sometimes doesn't come with that applause. Adult bravery is sometimes when you're sat on your kitchen floor, clutching your chest because your heart physically feels like it is breaking into 1,000 pieces, and you get up and you show up for work the next day. You haven't got your work colleagues saying, my God, you're so brave. One, I think because, like I said at the start, it can sound quite patronizing. However, I think it's so powerful. Now I've like thought about it. Now I've spoken about it. Now I've like mapped out this entire episode. It is so much different to people being and saying, oh my God, you should be so proud of yourself, because you associate being proud with something really positive. For example, you know, I've screenshotted my reach on my Instagram to being like 1.7 million this morning, sent it to my mum and my dad saying like, this is what I'm doing on my socials at the moment. This is how well it's going, because my mum and dad are really interested. And they were like, oh my God, you should be so proud. When you have a meltdown and you pick yourself off the kitchen floor and you turn up to work the next day, that act isn't something that you're going to share. It's a positive act. It's a negative thing because it's made you feel awful. So then you are not met with somebody because you don't tell somebody. You're not met with the, oh my God, you're so brave. You're not met with that because you don't tell people. Adult bravery is choosing yourself when no one else is going to choose you. Adult bravery is being able to tell somebody like, I'm not okay. I had it a few weeks ago with me. I nearly turned up to my parents' house saying like I'm spiraling a little bit. I was very overwhelmed with everything that was going on, not romantically or anything to do with my breakup. Just my life in general got a little bit overwhelming, but it seems to be all kind of sorting out now. I'm putting things in place to make it less overwhelming, but being able to turn up to my parents' house and say, hey, I'm really struggling, is an act of bravery. But like I keep saying, you don't think of it being like that because you associate bravery with being young. And so I really just wanted to reiterate here that the reason why we don't say we have been brave is because when you're a child, being brave as a child is proving to somebody else that you're okay. You got back up from being fallen over, you scraped your knee. Good, it's a performative, it's performance. Yes, it hurts, but you've got everybody around there saying, God, you're so brave, you're so brave. Being brave as an adult is showing up when no one else is there and being able to clap for yourself. And like I said, it's no longer a performative act. It's quiet commitment to yourself that you say to yourself, this friggin' hurts. It hurts at the moment. Like it really hurts. I actually don't know how to make it stop. But I'm going to sit with myself and I'm going to sit with myself and commit myself through it. When do you ever say that line to somebody when you're going through a breakup? You don't say that to people because that's quite intense and you might not want to share that with somebody. And the reaction when you do share that with somebody isn't going to be, you're so brave. It's going to be like, you should be so proud. And it almost makes that really difficult emotion seem like it shouldn't be a difficult emotion. When someone says to you, that is friggin' brave, that is somebody acknowledging the fact that how you're feeling is so awful and you're choosing to then come out the end of it and say, do you know what, this is horrendous, it's not going to kill me, it's temporarily going to really hurt and I don't know how to sort it out, but I'm going to stick with myself. When you break it down like that, and even now I'm like thinking about it and talking about it, I think, my God, like if someone had just said to me, that is so brave, I'd be like, oh yeah, like I am brave and I'm being brave. And in those negative feeling emotions and those moments, you aren't told that you're brave because you're not telling people about that. You're not telling people about how hard it is to get out of bed every day. So realistically, you need to learn how to tell yourself that you are being brave. And I know how I always say, like, journaling is so powerful. And the reason why I talk about journaling so much, and the reason why I'm such a huge advocate in journaling, is because I know for a fact that your mind currently is going to feel like it is the spaghetti junction. It's going to feel like, for all of my non-English listeners, the spaghetti junction is a junction in Birmingham. It's chaos. It's all higgledy-piggledy. It looks like spaghetti. And your mind is just on overdrive with, how has this happened? Why is this happening? What is my ex doing? Why isn't he texting me? Why isn't she reaching out? Why isn't she called? Your mind is going to be on overdrive with those. I have been there. The brain fog that I dealt with, and the fixation on certain things, and the hyperfixation on certain things, what they're doing, who they're with, where they're going, who they're talking to, what are they saying, what's the storyline? Everything else is irrelevant. And it's so weird because when I think back to the amount of time that I actually had off work, I would work for a couple of hours a day, but I'm certain I had about 3 months off work. And I talk about my old job being at the demolition firm. I was actually talking on my Patreon the other day. Someone asked me to do an episode on if the glow up isn't just you starting an amazing business and traveling and doing all of this. What happens if it's just normal? You know, you actually go back to enjoying a job you love and stuff. And I know for a fact, if I hadn't quit and worked for my ex, that I would have stayed at that demolition firm and I would have been so happy there. And now when I look at my life now, I think, yeah, that job would slot straight into my life and I would have been happy there. It would have paid for my bills. It would have paid for my house. It would have paid for me to go on holiday. It would have paid for my car. I would have been comfortable and happy there. And then I was thinking, and when I mapped out this episode, I was thinking, would I have been able to go to my old boss and say, this is what I'm going through. This really hurts. Can I have some time off? And I had a really good relationship with my old boss. I've got a really good relationship with everybody that I worked with at the demolition firm, to be fair, but I don't think I would have been paid for the time off. Yes, I probably would have been able to have the time off, but I wouldn't have been paid. I was paid, obviously, because my ex was my boss, and the person that was causing all the pain was my boss. The least that he could have done was to make sure that my bills would have been paid. But I know that not everybody is in that situation, and I know that not everybody has that luxury, and I never, ever take that for granted. And I try and talk less on it because people always say, can you talk about working for your ex? And I find it really difficult because I think if I was in the situation where I was still employed outside of my ex's business, I would have really struggled. And just connecting this to being brave, I would have probably thought of myself as being more brave if I had to get up and show up to an office every day outside of my ex's business. I think getting up in the morning and being able to face a day when your mind feels like it does is so incredibly brave. And as humans, we will wait till the end of the day and think, God, I'm really proud of myself. And yes, you should be, but also you're probably proud of yourself for quite positive things. At the end of the day, showing up for yourself with a journal and having maybe a page on being brave, you actually recognize that you are struggling. These emotions are having a negative impact on you, but you're fighting and you're showing up and you're being brave. And even if you are in no contact and you didn't text them back, that is something that you should be proud of. But it's also a negative emotion. And sometimes like people don't want to say like, oh, you should be so proud of yourself. I say it a lot. I say it a lot to you guys. You should be so proud of yourself. But now I've listened to this other podcast and how she's talking about being brave. It is an act of bravery. And I remember saying to my mum, I'm not eating pasta and cheese anymore. And I make lightheartedness about this because when I look back, I actually cannot believe how much pasta and cheese I ate. And now, you know, when my nieces request it, I'm like, no, Auntie Lou doesn't want to make that. She's not making that. Or if I go round to my parents' house, it's so funny. Mum's like, they've had pasta and cheese. I'm like, I can smell it. It's so weird because with me going to therapy, I affirmed that that is a clear trigger of mine and I am not embarrassed about that. People would hear me talk and think, what? Pasta and cheese is a trigger. Pasta and cheese is a huge trigger of mine, and I ate it for about 6 months. No wonder I lost loads of weight, because I was just eating pasta and cheese. It wasn't healthy. It was keeping me carby because I was training for a marathon, but actually, realistically speaking, it was something that I became quite obsessed with, unhealthily obsessed. And when I decided to sign up to HelloFresh, I said to my mum, I was like, I've cooked for the first time in months tonight. And mum was like, that is something you should be super proud of. And yes, I was super proud, but it was also really brave of me to think, I'm going to reach out to HelloFresh and see if I can actually eat some meals. The act itself is something that you can be so proud of. Cooking a meal, I made a chili, or, I made pasta with a different sauce. That is something that you can be proud of. But actually sitting there and thinking, I need to eat a decent meal. I need to make sure that, I'm actually putting goodness and health into my body. That is the brave part of it. And I think it is really easy to forget the thought processes before the act because your mind is on overdrive. And so the mindset shift that you have to have is obviously, like I said, this hurts. I don't know how I'm going to fix it. I actually genuinely don't know how I'm going to fix it, but I'm going to stay with myself and not lose myself whilst I work out how I'm going to fix it. And the practical element here is being able to journal at the end of every day, the bravery part. What did you do? What thought processes are you having that are making you realize how brave you are going into this? What is making you feel like you are brave? And write them down, because like I said, in your mind, it's so higgledy-piggledy on overdrive, so intense. And so you forget certain things, but when you sit down and you just take 5 minutes to yourself, that's why I always say journaling is so important, especially when you are really going through your breakup, when you are in the pits and the trenches of your breakup. That's why journaling is so powerful, because it actually calms your mind, because you are taking time to get things out on paper as a reminder, because your mind is obviously on overdrive, concentrating on a million other things. And people say, how do you do it? How do you find the confidence? How do you love yourself? It's these little things that go into building your confidence back up, recognizing acts, recognizing thought processes, recognizing what you're doing on a daily basis to actually help yourself heal and not stay where your ex has left you. I think one of the hardest parts of a breakup is like the radical honesty that you have to hear. And being brave means that you have to face the truth. No matter how brutal the truth is, you have to choose clarity over fantasy. And you have to recognize that this is going to hurt, but you're going to find your bravery. And you're not going to pretend that you are fine when you are not. It's not posting your revenge glow up online when you are breaking down inside. And I remember posting my photos from Ibiza, and it was the August after my ex left. I went to Ibiza with my girls, and I had literally 3 days before met somebody at a party, kissed them, a guy that I talk about that I spent some time with after my breakup, and I hadn't kissed anybody for 14 years, and he was my first kiss. And so off I went to Ibiza, and I had that thrown into the mix. So I obviously thought, you do find somebody really quickly, because in that point I was still trying to untangle all my emotions. I was still very much going through my breakup, but this new person had come along, and I was like, okay, exciting. Then I was going to Ibiza, and I remember posting this photo, and I'm at O Beach. And Ibiza, I've got a fan in my hand, my hair all curly, sunglasses on, really skin tight, swimming costume on, little sarong, and I'm like, I've got the fan, my hair is flowing, and I captioned the photo, "Don't care, didn't ask." And at the time I thought, yeah, have that, posted that online. And I got back from Ibiza and I had the best time, and I got back to a house that I was reminded that my ex wasn't coming home. I wasn't able to tell my ex about what I thought about Ibiza, and we had plans to go to Ibiza for his 30th, but COVID cancelled them. And I think I've said on my Patreon, he took his new girlfriend for her 30th to Ibiza. Honestly, I think sometimes I listen back to my stories and I think people are going to think that I've made this stuff up, because honestly, when I think about it, I think, really? Did that happen? And it did happen. And people are like, how the hell did you cope with that? And I'm like, I'm unsure, but I did, because I'm still here to tell the tale. But I didn't have anybody to talk to about that. I came back from Ibiza and I was like, oh, and it was a front. And I remember my therapist calling it something, and I was racking my brains for it when I was writing this down and trying to say that, like, that wasn't brave of me. I wasn't being brave going to Ibiza. It was something that my therapist called performing resilience. And it was a performance that I was putting on. And it was like, I'm fine. You've left me for somebody new. I'm fine. And I always say that now I try and advise people not to do that, because I've been there, done that, and I try and kind of advise people from the things that I did that didn't make me feel good. I don't regret it, but I'm not giving advice from my regrets. I'm just giving advice from when something had made me feel rubbish. And then people see you posting online with the fan in O Beach, in Ibiza, and they think, oh, she's fine. And then they start telling you stuff about your ex because they think that you can hear it. And actually, I think that's what happened, because then people had word vomit, started telling me about the stuff that my ex was doing. And I was like, why are you telling me this? And then I was like, hold on a second, I'm showing up online. Like, don't care, didn't ask. Of course, I look like I'm fine. It's performative resilience, and it's not bravery. They're two different things. Bravery is facing the truth even when it hurts. Bravery is standing in the hallway of your house that you spent 2 years building and listening to somebody that you love and adore and who literally you wanted to spend the rest of your life with tell you that they checked out of your relationship 6 months before they left you. That's bravery, because hearing that will break your heart. And it did. It broke my heart. That's the type of bravery that I mean, because you then shut the front door and there's no one there saying, you should be so proud of yourself for being able to hear that. I wasn't proud of myself at all. That wasn't something I was proud of. That wasn't an emotion that came up immediately. I was not like, oh, I'm really proud of myself for listening to that. And this is my point. You being able to listen to that is you being brave. And if I then went to somebody, because I was embarrassed about, my ex saying that to me, I didn't realize that he had checked out. It was really hard for me to understand how I didn't see it. And this is the type of thing, going off on a tangent, but this is the type of behavior that I'm terrified. When I say that I'm scared of him, this is why, because I don't understand how somebody could cover up something so well. That behavior is really frightening. And I think people just think when you say you're scared of someone, it's because they're aggressive. And that's not the case at all. I'm scared of him because I genuinely had no idea how he was feeling. And yet I've known him 14 years of my life. That's what's terrifying about that. And sorry, like I said, that was a tangent. But the bravery element of it is being able to hear that and not going to war with yourself and not thinking, you idiot, how on earth did you not see this? And I say there was a couple of things that were happening before he left me where I thought, well, that's a bit strange. Not one part of me didn't think, oh, we could work through that. We've got a whole solid 14 years to work with. He's definitely 100% not going to leave me. There were those warning signs, but the bravery comes in when you are, like I said, you shut the front door and you think, this isn't going to make me spiral out of control. This isn't going to make me want to turn up to his parents' house and say, did you know that he had done this? This isn't going to make me want to slash every single tire of every single vehicle he owns. It's not going to make me want to turn up to where he's staying. That's the bravery part, being able to hear somebody that you love say those things to you and you not react and focus in on yourself and be able to actually think, do you know what? That really hurts. And I don't know how to make it better. Half the stuff that my ex said to me, I didn't know how to come back from. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to make sense of it. I tried to make sense of it because that's the type of person I am. I always go looking for solutions. I'm not very good at just leaving things how they are. I have to have kind of like a solution for pretty much everything in my life. And my old boss would probably laugh because I used to say on repeat, like, just bring me a solution, stop bringing me problems. And I didn't get a lot of answers to a lot of questions with my ex. And the fact that I choose myself now and I don't choose to go looking for those questions, I could very easily probably turn up to where he lives and say, hey, 3 years on, still looking for closure. Why did you do that? I'm stronger now. I can have the conversations with him. I don't want to. I've been brave and now I'm proud of myself. The bravery is first, and sitting with the grief instead of running away from it. That is brave. That is you knowing that one day you're going to turn around and be like, my God, I'm so proud of myself for doing that. But you're sitting in it now. So what are you telling yourself now? You're telling yourself that you are brave. You're brave for sitting in this moment and thinking, this grief is crippling me. This grief is actually suffocating me and I cannot see a way out. And the grief is causing my panic attacks. And you're going through these panic attacks. That's brave. And I hope that you can see the difference, because bravery is slow. It's exhausting. It's quiet, because the situations that you're brave in are situations that you don't want to tell people about. And I tell stories sometimes with my friends, and my friends that have gone through breakups after me. And I sometimes sit and I tell them stories. And I will just tell stories, and then I look up and I'm like, what? And they're like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, that yeah, but it's fine because look at me now. I'm totally okay. Like, you know, I can talk about it. And they're like, why have you never told us that? And it's those things, because there was a lot of embarrassment, a lot of shame. I talk about embarrassment and shame on my Patreon, but there was a lot of breakup embarrassment. I was so embarrassed that, one, I'd been left, and two, I didn't see the warning signs. There was a lot of shame because without a lot of stuff that my ex provided for me, I wouldn't be able to have restarted my life in such a positive way had it not been for, you know, my ex's hard work. That a lot of shame came with that. And these are the things that I think people don't think I address when I do, because these are the things that people don't address when you go through a breakup. People don't talk about shame. They talk about revenge. They don't talk about, actually, it's okay to feel like that. And it's funny because when I'm sat in those situations with my friends, they're like, as if. And I'm like, yeah, there was nobody there really saying, my God, you are so brave to be getting up and going on and going out and showing up in the world. And even if you are doing like performative resilience, even if you're performing for people, like behind closed doors, the conversations that you're having and the shit that you're having to digest, you are so brave for doing that. And you are the only person that is going to be able to remind yourself that you are this brave person. And like I said, taking back to the start of this episode, like someone calling you brave is quite patronizing when actually it shouldn't be, because it actually means facing the truth when it hurts. And the mindset shift that I wanted you to take away from this section is the truth will hurt. The truth does hurt. It really hurts. And I have heard some truths that have really, really hurt me, but it does not harm you. What harms you is staying stuck in what you wish was true. That's going to harm you. Being stuck in thinking, I wish, I hope that, you know, in the future, that's going to harm you more. Not the truth. The truth will hurt you, and it will hurt, and it will make your heart hurt. And I say that quite a lot. And I said it quite a lot. My heart hurts. That's going to hurt. That's where it hurts. The truth hurts. However, you will do more harm in wishing that you want your truth to be true that's when you're going to harm yourself. A lot of the time as well, I think I talk about boundaries, and being brave is setting boundaries, but it's like, who are you setting boundaries for? What you're doing at the moment is that you are learning to set boundaries for your future self. You are learning to set boundaries for a version of yourself you don't even know yet. You don't know this version of yourself. And you will always hear me say, I did not know I could be this person. I didn't know I could be this woman. I didn't know that I could live on my own. I didn't know that I could holiday by myself. I didn't know I could be this version of myself. But when I was going through my breakup, I was learning how to set boundaries. So now when I'm faced with a similar situation, or, I'm maybe triggered by something, I have a boundary there that I have put in place whilst I was going through the pits of my breakup, that now this version of myself honors, because she knows that back then I set it for a reason. There was a reason why I said, I'm not going to put up with that. And that's carried into my life now. I didn't know I was going to be this version of myself. Sometimes I terrify myself, and sometimes I shock myself because I go back into being like girlfriend, and I go back into being a lover girl, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, no, she does exist. She exists. But the version of myself that I've created is also something when I meet people, I like being able to say, oh no, I live on my own. And I've had it recently. I've met a couple of new people in my life, and they're like, you're single. And you're like, yes, because if I told you what I'd been through in the last 3 years, you would also understand why I'm single and wouldn't question it. People questioning, and I talk about it, but people question why you're single is so irritating, because you don't want to trauma dump and be like, the reason why I'm single is X, Y, and Z. Because then people go like, well, you're an oversharer. And I mean, I can't say I'm not an oversharer. I speak about my whole entire breakup online. But I think sometimes what you don't realize is the stuff that you're learning now. So when you say no to certain things, that's a boundary. And you're doing it because you're protecting your peace. So when your ex says, can you just, and you say no. There was a time when my ex would be like, can I come pick up this? Can I come pick up that? And I'd be like, yeah, of course. And I wanted to be there and I wanted to see him. And I didn't realize that him picking up stuff and taking them out of my house, and me watching him walk down the driveway and get in his car and drive back to where he was staying, was so triggering for me. It reinforced the fact that he had left me. It reinforced the fact that he had split up with me. And I thought, and at the time I was just thinking, at least I can see him. At least he's going to come to the house and I can see him, and he can see me, and he can see how good I look, and he can see that I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to cause an argument, and he can see that I am worth fighting for. That whole thing alone is why you need to create boundaries, because regardless of all of that, I should have said no, because the way it made me feel when he left was horrendous. And so I started saying to him, you can come over, but I need to be out, and you need to text me when you're gone. And even when he left, and you think that I'm insane already, I would sage the house, and I would get his negative energy out of the house. And I wouldn't have even seen him, but I could just feel his presence in the house. And it would make me feel like my space, my protected space, had been like that there'd been an intruder. And it's so weird because he paid for the mortgage, and he used to say to me, yeah, but you're living there mortgage free. I'm paying the mortgage. And I'd be like, okay, well, can I just come to your space? Can I just come into your protected space? Because I didn't. I wouldn't even be able to tell you where. I know who he lived with and I know the town, but I wouldn't even be able to tell you what the house looked like. I've never been there. And that was a boundary of mine. Like, can I come and get this while you're in? No. It should have been a no. And sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is say no, because immediately that is a boundary, because you're saying no and they go, but why? And you say, because I'm protecting my peace. That's a boundary. And the mindset shift here is if they valued you like they say they do, they will respect that boundary. If they don't, that is reinforcing the reason why you need to stay strong. Because if they don't respect your boundary, they don't respect you. And you might not have ever seen this, because I didn't. I used to say, please don't do something, and it would get done again. And I'd be like, just said I don't like that. I've just said I don't like seeing that. I've just said I don't like you talking to so-and-so. I've just said, please don't do that. And it get done again. And like, I just thought, oh, we're just growing up, you know, I'm stopping him from having fun. You know, blame, 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 blame. Me. I'm doing something wrong. No, he was disrespecting a boundary of mine. Why have you done it again? He couldn't tell me why. So he didn't need to do something again to hurt me, but he chose to. And he disrespected a boundary of mine. I learn along the way, and, you know, I didn't do this. I'm just caveat. I hold my hands up. I'm totally honest on this. I didn't do this. I was so reactive. I was like, react. Like, I'd get a message, I'd react. Email, react. Phone call, react. I didn't do this, but I did learn how to do it. And I do it now with certain situations. I use the 24-hour pause rule. If something or someone has texted me or something has triggered me, I wait 24 hours to respond now. And I don't mean that in every instance, not when like someone's texts me, I don't wait 24 hours. If the message or say like a phone call's annoyed me or something I've seen has annoyed me, I do not talk to that person or involved parties for 24 hours, because the mental clarity that you get in those 24 hours will save you from hurting your own feelings. What do I always talk about? Stop burning your hand on a hot stove. Stop hurting your own feelings. If you open up a conversation or an argument on the back of something that's triggered you, you're going to hurt your own feelings. I'm not saying ignore it, because I'm a big fan believer in being able to talk about your feelings, talk about how something's made you feel. But what I mean is, ask yourself, does replying to this message right now when I'm in this mood, when I'm this triggered, protect my peace? I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that the outcome is probably almost going to be no, it isn't. And one thing that I didn't do, because I was so new into going into my breakup, I'd never done it before. I had never had to speak to somebody about finances, speak to somebody about moving, speak to somebody about ownership of things. Every single opportunity that arose when he was asking me about the mortgage or whatever, I took that opportunity as to like bring it all the way back round to our breakup and ask him another question or something like that. I wish that I had a more generic response to questions to do with finances, the house and things like that. I didn't. And I ended up saying, like, if you want me to cover the costs, because I couldn't, please go and talk to my dad. And it was kind of like, I know that he avoided my family. He just didn't speak to my family. He abandoned my family like he abandoned me. I know that that would have stopped him in his tracks. And he could have gone and spoken to my dad. My dad would have spoken to him, but he didn't want to. So that became my generic response, not because I knew that he wouldn't go, because I was being honest. I can't cover the costs of what you're asking me to cover. So either you go and speak to my dad, because I'm not moving out of this house until I have a house to move into, or you continue on paying for the house like we agreed. I didn't do that initially, and I should have done. And I think when you have a generic response, it makes it easier to protect your peace. And again, having things like that and standing up for yourself and standing up against, knowing that they're probably going to say, well, I paid for the house for her to live in for a year and a half. Knowing they're probably going to say, well, she took money off of me. Knowing that you deserved everything that you got out of the breakup financially or with the house or anything like that. That is brave. It's not easy having somebody come up to you and say, you took him his money, you did this, you did that. That isn't easy. That is bravery. That is not something that I'd sit here and say, like, I'm so proud of myself for doing this financially. I'm brave for standing up for myself, for creating boundaries to make sure that I protected my peace. And so being brave for now is important, but just know that every single time you make a brave decision, every single time you have a brave mindset shift, every single time you do something to remind yourself of bravery, just know that you are also doing it for your future self. You are also showing up for, even though it doesn't feel like you are, because you're so stuck in
your breakup, you are showing up for your future self. You might not think you are, but you are. And when people say like, I just can't look into the future, these little things are helping you look into the future, because you're thinking, hold on a second, future me is not going to stand for that. There is a big fat list of things in my journal that I have made off the back of my breakup, and I still add to them now, of things that I will not stand for in a relationship. And I don't think you truly know that and get to grips with that list until you have spent a long time on your own. And this is why people are then stung, because they jump into another relationship and they repeat old habits, and those same repeating patterns come up. If you have me on my Patreon, you know that I'm aware of repeating patterns in new relationships and old relationships. I saw it with my own eyes. People will repeat their old habits, and that's something that, if you find comfort in that, I mean, I found comfort in knowing that horrible question of like, do they change for somebody else? I can firmly say no on that with my situation, but it will prevent you from repeating old habits and not laying down and letting them get away with everything, but letting things slide when actually you should have probably pulled them up and said, I don't like this. This is how it's making me feel. If it happens again, I'm not going to have the same conversation with you. I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. That's how I handle things now. And it is so important to be able to find your voice. It's so brave to be able to find your voice, especially when you feel like you didn't have a voice in your relationship or during your breakup. Like I always say, I felt like I was definitely silenced a little bit during my breakup, which is sad, because there is no way that a man would be able to silence me now. I feel like, and I'm smirking because that's what I mean. Sometimes I scare myself because I'm like, who officially? Who are we? But finally, I just wanted to remind you that bravery isn't just doing big things. It's the quiet choices, the choices you make before the action, the things that you say to yourself, how you bounce back from something when nobody else is watching. That is bravery. Bravery is being able to say no because you know it's going to benefit you. Even though your head is saying, say yes, say yes, say yes, say yes, see them, see them, see them, see them, see them, see them, and you've gone, no, because you've taken 24 hours to respond. You've realized it's not good for your head. It's not good for your heart. You're saying no, you're forming a boundary. It's bravery. And finally, I just wanted to touch on, which I hope I can start touching on more, letting people into your life when you have been burnt so badly is so brave. And people will always ask me like, are you worried about trusting again? And are you worried about throwing yourself into a relationship again? Yes, I would say that it does scare me. That's not why I'm not doing it, but it does scare me a lot. But when you come round to that and you allow somebody into your life and you open up to somebody, that is super brave, because of the stuff that you have been through, because of the things that you were put through, because there are probably 1,000,001 things that I could reel off and say, these are all the things that I don't want. And then there's probably 3 big things that I want in a relationship. And all the things that I don't want are mainly to do with the facts of how I responded to certain situations, not personality traits. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that's going to overstep the mark with boundaries. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that is going to not validate my feelings when I'm upset. And yes, that has an impact on your ex and how your ex treated you. But being able to say, hey, these are the 3 things that I want in a relationship. I've relearned what love is, and this is what I now want, is super brave. And I think the person that you meet, and when you meet that new person, they will also get that. And if they don't, they are not the one for you. Because trust me, I'm going to do an episode on manifesting this next week. You will not attract somebody into your life that is a carbon copy of your ex, because your ex has been removed out of your life for a reason. Trust me, a couple of the people I've met since my ex are carbon copies of my ex, and I have seen straight away, and I have put a boundary in place and thought, absolutely not, you need to protect yourself here, Lou. And finally, I just want to leave you on this final mindset shift, because we know I love a mindset shift. you might not feel brave. This might not feel brave. You might feel like, I'm just going through a breakup. This is bravery. You are brave. And you are still here. And you are still fighting. And that is everything. Absolutely everything. If you have enjoyed this episode, sorry for if the camera lens has changed. I actually don't see it, but my phone died. So that was also really great to add on to the technical difficulties that I've had today. I finished 2 hours later than I wanted to finish. And now I'm going to sit and edit this and then put it out to you guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we have had throughout this podcast episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know. Leave me a review. Send me a message. Join me on my Patreon. There is so much you can do to get in contact with me. Just look after yourself, guys. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye.